Have you ever dreamed of that bike that's exactly the way you want it? Have you ever considered building it yourself? Very few things are more satisfying than that, but I still remember a time when I was petrified by the same idea. So here's a series of videos covering how it's done and hope to inspire at least some of you to try. The biggest challenge will probably be understanding what parts you need, and that is why I have two builds here to compare. An aluminum Kona frame that I bought new. This is one of the last scandium frames they've ever produced, and a carbon Norco revolver that I bought used online. Almost everything can be done on the cheap, and I will mention the few tools you must have when the time comes. To start with, you will need either a bike stand or a workbench and a vise. But first things first, you should never forget that Instagram shot. It's very exciting to see all the parts together, ready to be installed. Frame is the heart of your bike and it dictates almost everything that goes on it. The headset type dictates the fork, the bottom bracket type that also dictates the cranks you can install, the seat tube dimension, the rear axle and rear axle spacing that pretty much dictates the type of wheels you can install. Cable routing is also dictated by the frame. The drivetrain type, water bottle cage, and finally, if you want to install a dropper, are you going to have it routed internally or externally? All these are dictated by the frame that you choose, so it's very important to do your research up front. And because frame is the most expensive part of your build, you might want to look at protecting it first. Here you can see on the Kona, I only have a tiny bit of chainstay protection, which is definitely not enough. And on the Norco, you can see how I've already protected the down tube and the chainstay by using two products. One is the shelter tape that is pretty thick and flexible, very good protection for those sensitive areas. And two, I use the 3M mastic tape here on the chainstay. I like this the most because it's very flexible and will actually stick really solidly to these surfaces. And since your bodies are going to ask for it, don't forget to weight that frame. This Norco with the seat post clamp, with the rear through axle and the bottle cage bolts, two sets of them, comes down to 1,394 grams. It is right at 1,300 without the through axle. Same size, 15 inches or small, aluminum scandium frame from Kona with the seat post collar comes up to 1,741 grams. That is pretty much a pound heavier than the carbon frame of the Norco. Because it helps you attach it to the bike stand, usually the seat post is the very first one to be installed. There's two things to be worried about here. One is the internal dimension of that tube, and that will dictate the type of seat post you're going to get. Both of these frames use 30.9, other popular sizes are 27.2 and 31.6. It would be the same for dropper posts. If the seat post diameter is usually easy to find in the specs, what is not that easy to find is the size of this clamp that holds it in place. Mine came with the frame, and this is what's called the fixed bolt. You can get the quick release, and all you need to provide is one dimension. The external dimension of that seat tube, this one would be 34.9. That's what it is standard. If your seat post and frame are aluminum, you're going to use some grease for installation. If either seat post or frame are carbon, you're going to need some carbon grease or carbon paste. Don't forget about the little bolt on the seat post collar. This needs a bit of grease as well. Never put carbon paste on it. Apply some on the inside of the seat tube or a thin layer of carbon paste here on the seat post, and make sure you push it in past that minimum insertion point just to keep the frame safe and keep yourself safe. And finally, tightening this bolt. This is very important. You might not think about it. If it's carbon, you need 5 Newton meters or less, otherwise you're going to crush it. If it's a dropper post, this can affect the functionality of it. And in general, this is going to be the first place where having a torque wrench will come in handy. Highly recommended. This is 5 Newton meters set. You can use any other torque wrench you have. With the frame on the stand, very tempting to jump in and install the fork or put your bottom bracket on, but If you have a frame like this with internally routed cables, you can see the rear hose, the brake hose coming out here. That is the derailleur cable. These cables are routed right around the bottom bracket here. They come through the down tube all the way up to your head tube. With nothing else installed, it's easy for you to reach out here and make your life a lot easier when you're running those cables. For this Kona frame, all cables are routed externally, so it's not critical to install any of the hoses right now. However, if you want to modify the cable routing in any way, you see me here drilled out the cable stops to run the continuous cable housing. If you need to do anything like that, this would be a perfect opportunity. I usually use the shift cable from Shimano. The SP41 is very good. You can also buy it in bulk, or it comes in a set like this. And with those cable ports removed, arm yourself with a lot of patience and start running them. This is the good time to think about where the cables will come in from. Here on the left is going to be my shifter cable. Because I'm doing moto style brakes, the rear brake hose is going to be on the other side, otherwise it will be here as well. So with the shifter cable and the brake hose already pushed into the frame, it's time for me to look at the bottom bracket. This Norco comes with the not so popular press fit bottom bracket. It's called press fit because the bearings are pressed inside the frame as you see it here. In order to shop around for your bottom bracket, you're going to need to provide this internal dimension. This one is 46 millimeters. Also the shell width, this is 73 millimeters. Bikes like Trek use 92 millimeters or BB92. Last thing you need to provide is the type of cranks you're going to use. This is a PF30 bottom bracket because it is a BB30 crankset. BB30 refers to the axle diameter. This is 30 millimeters. SRAM also uses 24 millimeters in their GXP. Shimano uses 24. And you also have the new SRAM Dub, which is almost 29 millimeters. So that will dictate how big is the opening here and the type of bearings used. These bottom brackets come in especially from SRAM. Shimano are not considered to be that good. That's why a lot of people install aftermarket bottom brackets. In my case, I'm going to install this Enduro bottom bracket, which is supposed to last longer and just keep the bike quiet. The big problem of press fit is just creaking and cracking coming from the bottom bracket area. And to find an advantage for these bottom brackets, they can usually be installed with a homemade press. You see me here using a threaded rod, a couple of big nuts, and then use the big washers. These are 2 pieces of aluminum. All you're gonna do is just press these cups into the frame, and at the minimum you will have to use grease just to grease up these surfaces that will touch the frame. I strongly encourage you to use the manufacturer's recommendations for installing these bottom brackets though. For my Enduro bottom bracket, I put some grease here where it touches the frame. Then greased up that BB shell a little bit inside the frame as well. Just push the drive side BB right into place. And then I'm just going to tighten it with my DIY press over here. Here is press it in until it touches the frame. Ready to install this non-drive side. And a little trick, I put a piece of paper here right in front of my big washer just to make sure that I don't scratch that anodized surface of my bottom bracket. So here we go. Until snug, and I'm done. And that's all it is to it. It's actually a lot easier than you might think. If you're lucky, your dream frame comes with what's called a threaded bottom bracket. Also, English, ISO, or BSA bottom brackets are interchangeable terms for it. And in order to purchase the appropriate bottom bracket for it, all you need to provide is this, which is the shell width, standard 73 millimeters for mountain bikes and 68 for road. These are a popular choice because all you do is just thread these caps onto the frame, and also because they allow you, by using these spacers, to adjust the chain line for your drivetrain. Installation is very easy, but you're going to need a bottom bracket tool that is very easy to find, by the way. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions on how to do it. First, some quality grease on the thread here of the bottom bracket. Next, bring your drive side or right side bottom bracket cup. This is a reverse thread, so start to tighten it by hand. Remember, you have the little spacer here. Then grab your torque wrench and the bottom bracket tool and just tighten it to that 45 Newton meters. Only difference on the non-drive side or left side is that this is a normal thread, so tighten clockwise. Then grab the bottom bracket tool and tighten to manufacturer specification. Next in line is going to be the headset, which is installed right here into the head tube. Headset is this tube bearing assembly that centers the fork to the frame and allows it to move freely when steering. It includes the top and bottom bearings, the eventual cups, the crown race, what is called the top cover, and finally the top cap and the star nut. Use the link on the screen for more info on this. I did a video not too long ago. The type and the size is dictated by the frame, and the fork has to match that. By far the easiest to work with is the integrated headset that you see here on my Norco. Here the bearings just fit into the frame and nothing else is needed. Kona comes with the other standard commonly used today called ZS or zero stack. In this case, the cups will have to be pressed into the frame first, then the bearings sit on it. Both these frames use what's called the taper head tube, so the top bearing and the bottom bearing are different sizes. Bottom bearing is bigger than the top, as you see it over here. But frame manufacturers usually clearly state the type of headset they use. To press in the cups, all you need is a bit of grease here on the outer surface, and then I'm going to use the same DIY press from the bottom bracket. I'm using this bearing press because it's more convenient. If you use a threaded rod with the big washers or my two pieces of aluminum here, all you want to do is just press these in one at a time. Also pay attention as you start to squeeze this in, make sure that your cup goes in evenly and not crooked. This is a lot easier done with a dedicated tool versus a DIY tool like this. And once it tightens up, you know it's done. This is the hardest one to push in, the top cap, but once it's nicely centered, it will fit in as easy as the bottom bracket. Repeat that same procedure for the bottom cup, and you're probably done with the hardest thing to do on this new bike build. And that's also the end of this part one of my video. Frames are ready to go, bottom brackets are in, cables are routed, headsets are ready to go as well. We're ready to install everything else on the bike, but that's going to be in part two of my video. What do you guys think? Do you have any tips and tricks to share here with all of us? I would love to hear in the comments below. If you found this useful, don't forget to like the video. In the description of the video, I included a lot of links. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will see you in part two when we'll continue to build the bike from scratch. Cheers, guys. Cheers.